Hello, hello, hello! Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of greeting across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my wonderful, marvelous, dear scholars, to the study. Hello there, Sophia Ignace. Congratulations on getting first, and thank you for the subscription. Sophia Ignace, I'm not streaming, so I'll die in bed and listen to you instead. Oh, please take care. Oh, thank you for the follow, Guthag. Welcome. Welcome, 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 all you marvelous, wonderful scholars. Hello, Julian20, welcome. Hello there, Crusader Corrupted. Sophia beat me. Welcome. Hello there, Kinchon. Welcome. Hello there, Dr. Zadium. Hello. Hello there, Cool Skeleton. Welcome. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, and of course, Dr. Zadium has to have his radio voice. Because, of course, why not? Oh my goodness. Thought I heard a shout somewhere. Must have been a stray book squid that came in. They tend to do that. I have to hydrate for this first. Hello there, all you marvelous, wonderful scholars. Welcome to Radio Matsu. I hope you're all ready for a wonderful reading stream tonight. We're reading The Midnight Folk just for you, marvelous, dear scholars. So sit back, relax, have a hot or a cold beverage. Keep yourselves warm, my wonderful listeners, and let's dive right in to Radio Matsu here, right here at the study. Oh my goodness, I really enjoy doing that. Oh, well, 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 well. Sophia Ignacy, here comes radio voice. Well, I hope you enjoyed the radio voice, Dr. Sadium. Oh my goodness. Julian20, love it. Oh, good, good, good. Oh, how are all you dear scholars doing today, or tonight, or tomorrow, or whenever it is across this vast, marvelous multiverse, as we said? Dr. Zadium, doing well? Oh, goodness, wonderful to hear that. Glad to hear it. I'm always glad to hear when my scholars are doing well. Makes me feel good. Feel good. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, the study is extra dry tonight, so I'm doing a little bit of sniffling. Oh no. I kind of sometimes I feel I need a humidifier in here, but the problem is you get a humidifier in here and it'll ruin the books. I don't want humidity ruining the books. It mixes the pages. So, like all good, wonderful librarians, I suffer for my books. It's the only thing we can do. Oh, little Horace. Horace is a little dry too. I sometimes worry, if I touch Horace, I won't touch you right now, Horace. I know, but sometimes I'm worried that he's gonna crumple up. Firefly, a small one on low won't. I have several. Oh, that's an idea. Horace, is there any chance you might be able to procure us a small humidifier? Yes, I'll pay you back. That is, if I actually have money, I technically don't need money in the study, but you know how it is. But anyway, Firefly, the one for babies. Alright, I'll keep an eye out for that. But, I digress. Yes, it's wonderful to have you all here. I'm so happy to have you. Tonight, as you might notice from our little poster right over there, we are going to be reading more of The Midnight Folk. And before I start the reading, I will make a small confession. Even though I have a bookmark in here, I don't entirely remember what paragraph I ended on for the last stream. I mean, it's been such a long time since we've read this, that I haven't bothered to keep up with it. So I will go from where I think I left off. For those who don't know, The Midnight Folk does not have chapter breaks. So we've been reading basically at whatever logical point it is to stop, or whenever I am getting tired. Okay. But for those who are new, The Midnight Folk is the story of Yun K. Harker, who lives in Seeking's house and is searching for his great grandfather's, or is it grandfather's? I guess it's great grandfather's, the treasure that was lost. His family has been blamed for the loss of the treasure, but he is looking for it. All the while, he's dealing with witches, as well as the mysterious Abner Brown, who is also looking for the treasure. Oh my goodness. It's quite a story. It's the prequel to the much more famous story, The Box of Delights, which I would read, except it's not in the public domain. That was written in 1936. It's a marvelous book, but yeah. Kintron, marking on a bookmark is allowed so long as no damage befalls the book. That is true. Yes, 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 yes. I just wasn't thinking of it at the time. Yulian 20, love Box of Delights. Didn't get to finish watching because I got COVID. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh my goodness, Yulian 20. I hope you're well now. Well, I suspect you're well. If you're well, no. I mean, you could still be sick and still be listening to me. If that's the case, well, I hope this makes you feel better. Yulian 20. I am Danny. Oh, good, good. I'm glad to hear it. Sickness, illness. I don't like my scholars getting that. So, my dear scholars, shall we begin our journey back to the Midnight Folk? I will take that silence as a yes. So, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, and we will begin our reading of John Macefield's The Midnight Folk. Kay followed at a little distance, and let himself in just as the blackbirds were stirring. He was visible by this time, but very dim and blurred. Oh yeah, Kay drank a concoction that made him invisible. As he climbed into bed, the thought occurred to him. Suppose I'm in... Let me get Kay's voice again. Suppose I'm invisible at bedtime. What on earth shall I do then? I'll give Ellen a jolly good scare. That's one good thing. At this he fell fast asleep, till Ellen called him for the second time by shaking him hard. You'll be late again, Master Kay, and then you'll be punished. He sat up in bed, blinking, not knowing quite where he was. He stayed there blinking long after Ellen had gone. He was not quite sure that he had not dreamed all his adventures. He was no longer invisible, that was very sure. Then, as he sat blinking, a nibbling, scrunching noise came from the dressing table. Something there was grinding and eating one of his lumps of sugar. He sat very still, staring at it. He could see nothing, but the lump was being turned about. Oh, there's a little illustration here. About and becoming smaller. Presently, it was all gone, and the scrunching ceased. Then a queer thing happened. There was a little odd flickering sort of a noise upon the dressing table. One of the other lumps of sugar moved in a most odd way to the edge and toppled over to the floor. After lying there for a few seconds, it began to move again, along the edge of the skirting board, behind the dressing table, where he could no longer see it. Soon after this, the scrunching noise sounded from somewhere in the wainscot. I know what it is, he thought. The mice have been licking the invisible mixture. He hopped out of bed and pulled the vial from the mouse hole. Alas, they had been more than licking it. They had contrived to pull or to knock out the stopper, or perhaps he had not fixed it in properly, and the precious mixture was gone, either drunken by the mice or evaporated. Even the smell of green bracken and the flavor of peppermint had gone from it. It was just a tiny empty vial of red cut glass. In his grief and disappointment, he flung it through the open window into the bushes. "I'll never be able to be invisible again," he thought, "just as I'd set my heart on it." As he entered the dining room, he noticed Snibbins, curled up on his chair with his chin twisted underneath his paw, sound asleep. The governess asked for Black Malkin. "Oh, I can't let him in, ma'am," Ellen said. "He's in such a pickle. He's plastered with mud or something, just as if he'd been down a rabbit hole." Black... Oh, thank you for the follow. Call me Sempure Daddy. And welcome to the study. I am Matsu Quinox, interdimensional omniversal librarian. This is my assistant and companion Horace, and I do reading streams, gaming streams, and quite a variety of different streams. Welcome! We are reading The Midnight Folk by John Masefield. Wonderful to have you. Hello there. Call me Senpai. Oh, hello there, FT Waste. Welcome. Glad to have you here. We're always welcome to new scholars. Black Malkin was brought in plastered with the mud of the hog wallow. "He'd better be bathed," Kay said, "because that mud is like tarring and feathering. It closes all the pores of the skin, and he may die." A big pan of hot water was brought, and although Black Malkin objected very strongly, he was soaked, scrubbed, rinsed, and dried. Excuse me. "Another time," Ellen said, "you keep out of those rabbit holes, you foolish things. You'll get enough food here without crawling down rabbit holes which don't belong to you. Another time, the rabbit hole will fall right in on you, and then where will you be?" "Call me Senpai. You call your assistant Horace?" "No, his name is Horace. H-O-R-U... No, it's not U-R-S. H-O-R-A-C-E. Horace, I haven't forgotten how to spell your name." "No, it was just a mix-up." Don't be like that. Look. I'll make it up to you after the stream, alright, Horace? I promise. You alright? Yes, Horace. Like the Roman, poet. After lessons that morning, Kay went to his bedroom, to the cool, pink secret cave made by the valance of his bed. "I don't suppose the book will be here," he thought. That was probably only a dream, though it was a jolly one." When he turned back the flap of wrappy carpet, the book was there. He turned over on his stomach with a sigh of pleasure to examine it in peace. "The Sea Gunner's Practice," he read to himself, "with a description of Captain Shotgun's murdering piece with the improved breech action for use upon savage coasts, together with tables and proportions for all pieces usual to that service, by Bing Blastum, Master Gunner." How much more fantasy can you get? Captain Shotgun and B. Blastum, Master Gunner. That is just such a British fantasy thing to do. On the flyleaf, in a neat handwriting, was a clove hitch flourish below it, on the flyleaf in a neat handwriting, with a clove hitch flourish below it, was the name of the owner. Aston Harker, Seeking's House, 1804. "Why," he said to himself, "it is my great-grandfather's book. How very strange." The book had been the property of other men before it had come to Captain Harker, for other names and earlier dates were written in it. He settled to read the Sea Gunner's practice with stiff reading for a little boy, though there were thrilling pages in it. Oh, he settled to read. I misread that, my dear scholars. Oops. He settled to read. The Sea Gunner's practice was stiff reading for a little boy, though there were thrilling pages in it. One page was labeled, "To make the fine mealed gunpowder for priming." Another had the heading, "To make the coarse-corned gunpowder." Another began, "To make colored flares and other artificial fireworks." "Some day," he thought, "I'll make gunpowder by the help of this. Then I'll fire off Great-Grandpa's pistols that are on the wall, and I'll have fireworks every night." That's an interesting thought, to have fireworks by shooting off antique guns, kid. At the end of the book, some 20 blank pages have been left by the publishers, so that sea gunners might make notes and accounts of their stores according to the tables printed for their guidance. Julian 20 sounds dangerous. Very dangerous! It does sound very dangerous. Captain Harker had made notes upon the first of these pages. The rest had been scrawled upon in a clumsy, coarse, untidy writing, by someone who did not know how to spell. In the cover of the book at the end was a pocket, which had once contained an engraving of Captain Shotgun's murdering piece. The engraving was gone. In its stead was a very old, brittle, yellow piece of newspaper headed, "New York, December 1811. Strange rescue in Gulf." Oh, and here comes a long piece. Let me get some water before I continue this part. Pardon me. He read on. "Great interest was roused in West Street last evening by the arrival of the ship Seaman's Rights. Captain Isaac Winterbourne with a cargo of logwood from Campeche. Captain Winterbourne reports that while in the Gulf he saw smoke rising apparently from the sea. Thinking that some ship might be on fire or assailed by pirates, he stood towards the smoke and was soon rewarded by raising the Crane's Reefs, or rocky islets, mentioned by Navies in his Gulf Pilot. The smoke proceeded from a fire of driftwood kindled by a solitary castaway, whom they found to be too crazed by his misfortunes to give a clear account of himself. No doubt he was the survivor of some merchantman wrecked in one of the great hurricanes, of which the last season was so fruitful. He seemed accustomed to a seafaring life, but neither his clothing nor his speech gave any clue as to who or what he was, the hardships to which he had been subject having destroyed his reason. On arrival in West Street, Captain Winterbourne sent him to a well-known doctor in Bleecker Street, from whose house he escaped in the course of last evening. Though he is certainly harmless, his manner may perplex or even frighten people, and the following description of him is issued to the public. A strongly built man of 5'7" or 8 inches in height, brown hair and eyes, short sandy beard, nose broken as though by a blow, and the lips somewhat slobber. When found on the rocks, he was dressed only in a suit of thoroughbred cottons. He left the Seaman's Rights in a costume supplied by Captain Winterbourne, tarred trousers and a tarred hat. It's hard to keep up this accent. Blue shirt and jacket. He had no property but an old Bible, a prayer book, and a pamphlet on gunnery, to all of which the demented creature appeared equally attached. All these volumes had several possessors, and gave no clue to his identity. Dr. Zadium, those sure are some rights. Apparently, yes. Captain Winterbourne, in his passage home, was twice assailed by the tyrants of the waves, but by his vessel's speed was on both occasions able to uphold the challenge of her name. Kay wondered if the story could refer to some survivor of the plunderer. Captain Harker had said that the plunderer was last seen sailing towards the Gulf. Here was Captain Harker's book taken from a rock in the Gulf at about the time of the plunderer's disappearance. And then the strange thing was that the book had been in the possession of this gamekeeper, whose name was Roper Bilges. Yes, Kay thought, the gamekeeper is the descendant of my great-grandfather's Roper Bilges, and probably the man taken off the reef was Roper Bilges himself. I'm jolly glad that he did have some hardships. But wait a minute. There's all this writing at the end. Perhaps that will tell me more. Returning to the writing at the end, he read as follows. Julian 20, how seafaring. Oh yes. It's interesting to note that John Masefield was also well known for a certain poem, which some of you may know. You might have heard of it. You might not know the title, which is called Sea Fever. For those who haven't heard of it, it has the most famous ending, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer me by. He is the one who wrote that. So it is actually very, very... It makes sense that John Masefield would include a lot of seafaring things in this book. They're saying, oh, Captain Kirk, yes, yes. He was quoting from John Masefield's Sea Fever, which again it's the same author as the book, which you might think unusual. I mean, a poet and a children's author. Turning to the writing at the end, he read as follows. The true statement of Roper Bilges, gunner in the ship Plunderer, Captain Harker, master. Since I have been spared to see that honesty is the best policy, I, Roper Bilges, set down the truth, so that justice may be done on villains. After I took charge of the Plunderer to prevent her falling into bad hands, I had words with Twainy Pricker, the sailmaker, as he called himself, though he was nothing better than a pirate, having been one often, as I will swear. On my giving him orders as captain, he gave me low words, which I passed by, thinking that they would wait till we was ashore. In the night he came to my cot with 3 others, with Jake and the coffin-maker, having been such in Bristol, and English Joe, that deserted the Blanche frigate, and had her on his stomach in blue. They said, D. your blood will no more Bilges for captain. Get down into the boat. They put me ashore on some rocks, where there was nothing but birds and a kind of rat what lived on shellfish and the rain. They give me nothing but Bible and prayer, and one about gunnery. Pricker was against giving me fire, but the men stood out for me to have that. When they pulled back to the ship, she filled and stood off, and I never heard of her again. She was going, as they said, to the French settlements. On being left alone, I collected driftwood for a dozen fires, which I always kept well heaped so as not to lose my fire. I ate on rats, shellfish, and seabirds, and the fish in the pools. At first I thought the crew was doing it for a pretend, and would come back and take me off. But my fine scoundrel Pricker saw to that. I reflected what my lot would be when the rain ceased on those hot rocks, with no shade, and whither I would go mad, etc. My main fear was of a hurricane, which might whelm me out of this wicked world, which is but a snare. My one hope was I had good books by me. Yes, yes, always have a good book with you. You know, that's a question, my dear scholars. I'll ask you. If you were stuck on a deserted island, what book would you bring with you? Or books. You can have more than one book. What books would you bring with you onto a deserted island? Cool skeleton. A diary. Ooh, very useful, very useful. A very useful book to have. Kinshon, How to Build a Boat. Yes, you would have that. Sophia, all of them. I'm somehow not surprised by that, Sophia, that you would say that. Cool skeleton, or maybe a sketchbook. Julian 20, Treasure Island. Oh, Treasure Island. Interesting choice there. On the 11th day, or it may be the 12th, for my mind was not very correct, being crazed with horror at T. Pricker's monstrous ingratitude, I was took off by the ship's seaman's rights. Captain Winterbourne, master, with whom I returned to New York, though not recovered in my brains. So fearing to be had into the madhouse to be cut open by the doctors, I thought it best to avoid into the country parts, where little by little my reason, which parts me from the brutes, came back as good as ever it was, though no thanks to T. Pricker, the madhouse being my dread as well he knew. Coming back to England, I see in the newspapers Captain Harker is not dead, of which I am heartily glad, for I never meant him harm. And I am glad not to have his blood on my soul, it lying all on Twinny Pricker, who I doubt not has reaped his judgment according. Yeah. It was he had the treasure. Whether it profited him I leave all to judge. For from that day to this no one has ever heard what came to him and them. One thing is sure, the ship is sank, for else we'd have heard of their folly, spending their ill-gotten gains, etc. If she was not sunk in a squall, she was cast away, and her crew and fine sailmaker captain made examples of as pirates, as I heartily hope. But having suffered according to his deserts, I forgive him the dirty turn he done me. But if this should come after my death into the hands of the police, let them know that Twinny Pricker was from the northern parts, a sailmaker by profession, and speaks in the northern way, lobster-eyed and blue of both eyes, wears his beard in the Newgate fringe fashion, has 2 teeth missing from the upper jaw on left side, being hit with a pot in a dispute about the victuals. He has also a lady's heart transfixed with arrow on chest in gunpowder, also the fat ox of Bedford on his right arm. He speaks somewhat thick, owing to the teeth being gone, stands a short fellow, but very thick. His hair, which we call twinny, is of a fair colour, like sea twine. Any one laying such by the heels would be entitled to the reward against pirates, though for my part not being wishful to testify against an old shipmate, as well as being of... Okay, this is a weird word. Zentian turn. I'll type that in just so you can see what kind of word that is. I've never heard of this word. It's an odd word. I mean, I've never heard of this word before. Being of a Zentian turn, and having forgiven him, would like to be kept out of it, not to come into court. If I could have the half reward for him, my one wish is this. Being Dr. Zane. Oh, I see it now. I see it now. Of course, because the X, yeah, the X is short for that. Yes, I forgot. It's an interesting little shorthand symbol. I had forgotten. Would like to be kept out of it, not to come into court. If I could have half the reward for him, my one wish in this, being for justice on bloody-minded villains. If he be now dead, as I sadly fear, government should hang his bones up as a warning what comes to these fine sailmakers that put their betters upon rocks, and would not give them even fire until forced to by some as would have shot them if they were refused, it being only bullets, as such dogs have brains to understand, being very ignorant fellows, for all they sit so high as these northern parts men do. Oh my goodness, that was a long sentence. But I have now done with these wicked men, and took back my own name of R.B., and no harm can come now, Captain H being now dead, so I live at peace. Only write this so as truth may prevail and justice be done. The half reward might be left for Roper Bilges at the post office Shrewsbury, and come consent to a third. R.B. Oh, hello there, Turtle. Welcome, and thank you for the hydrate. You're just in time. We are reading The Midnight Folk by John Masefield. They just got done reading about Roper Bilges and his account of how he ended up marooned. Kay read this story through 3 times. It served him jolly well right, he thought, to be served as he served my great-grandfather. I'm jolly glad that he was put ashore. It is hard luck that all the treasure was lost, but anyhow, I'd rather that than for Twinny Pricker and the others to have the benefit of it. It is exciting fun, piecing out the story. Turtle, I keep forgetting to say when I join to say finish story first. I will remember that. I will remember that. But this is a long story. This is a book. He went to the library, where with some trouble he pulled out the atlas, which had belonged to his grandfather. It was a big, heavy book. He lugged it to the table, turned up the western maps, and tried to find the Crane's Reefs. After some time he found them, as little black specks in the mists of the pale blue gulf, not very far from the lagoons of the French settlements. This is where they left Roper Bilges, Kay thought, and somewhere between those specks and the coast is where the plunderers sank. I expect she is all covered with coral now, or fallen all to bits. He left the atlas open on the library table, and returned to his lair above. When he had read the tale again, he left the sea gunner's practice on his dressing table. That is what happened to the treasure, he thought. Pricker took it from Bilges, and then it was sunk. I wish I could tell Great-Grandpa Harker, for that would be a load off his mind. No one could call that his fault. That afternoon the governess took him into the village, where he had to wait in the milliner's shop while she matched a reel of silk, to wait outside the butcher's, and not to play in the water of the gutter there, because there was blood in it, while she complained of last Sunday's joint, which had been tough even when minced. Then to wait outside the stationer's, and not to go staring at the sweets next door, because she would only be a minute, whereas she took 11, because she met Mrs. Gossip there, changing her novel. Then in the last torment to wait in the sitting-room of Mrs. Tattle, looking at her case of wax fruits, while they talked about Mr. Holyport's sermon. I'm noticing a pattern with all these names. I hope you are as well, my dear scholars. Again, this is a very British children's book way of doing things, I think. And the sermon before that, and whether bugles were going to be much worn that year. The mention of bugles roused him for an instant, but it was soon plain that it wasn't his kind of bugle, and that neither the governess nor Mrs. Tattle would come rousing the forest like Robin Hood. Far from it. Then there was talk of the butcher whose meat was so tough, and of the new butcher, down in the river road, who had supplied a piece of veal that really Mrs. Tattle was usually afraid of veal, because Dr. Gubbins says that you must be careful about veal, especially at night, but that this piece of veal really it wasn't like veal at all, but just like young lamb, so crisp when hot and delicious cold. Turtle, tough meat. Oh, yeah, sounds like it. Then there was all this talk about this and that in the newspapers, that it was really dreadful what people were coming to, especially young people. Here there came a home thrust at Kay, who wasn't at all what we were when we were girls, which was very likely true. Oh, thank you for the hydrate, Sophia. There's so much to talk about. Oh my goodness. Oh, that was a little bit of a weird delay. Turtle, I gotta go. Have an amazing stream. Oh, thank you for coming, Turtle. Always good to have all my scholars here. And you have a wonderful night, Turtle. However, this visit, like so many others, came to an end at last. He was walked home to tea at home. He was walked home to tea at home. I think that sentence slipped past the editor. No offense to John Masefield. That's such an odd sentence. He was walked home to tea at home. Huh. Very odd. He was walked home to tea at home with a lecture about not fidgeting when he was paying a call, and especially of not twisting his hat elastic round and round, and then letting it untwist, just as he'd been told not to at the swing, because it made everybody sick. He was undressing for bed that night when the governess, who was preparing to play the piano, called him from the study. Give me 1 second, dear scholars, I have to remember her voice. Kay, was it you who had out the big atlas and left it open here? Yes, it was, please. What did you have it out for? Please, I wanted to look out a place. I wanted to look out a place. Yes, but why didn't you ask me or Ellen to put it back when you had done with it? You must get into the way of being tidy, and not leave great books about when other people want to use the table. It was just this interruption which kept him from putting the sea gunner's practice into the secret nook. It was lying there on the dressing table, just as he had left it. He had almost picked it up to put it away when she asked that question. Then it went out of his mind. He got into bed, making up his mind to keep awake. He was quite sure that he would not go to sleep. He half thought that he would get out of bed to hide away the book, but he did not see the use of it. One of the mice was scrunching away at the wainscot. He wondered if it was still invisible. It went scrunch and scrunch, as though grinding at the wood sideways. The scrunching mingled with the singing of the governess at last in a very drowsy noise, which made the room dimmer, 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 until... He woke up suddenly, wide awake, and still with terror from the knowledge that someone was in the room. He rolled under the clothes at once, waited terrified there for a minute, and then peeped out. The room was brightly lit as before, by no apparent light. It was dark night out of doors still, as he could see. An old woman in a poke bonnet was standing close to his bed, looking about her. "Our young friend is fast asleep, Black Malkin," she said. "But tread quietly. I must have a look about here. He knew that sharp voice at once, and the next instant saw her face. It was Mrs. Pouncer. "Yes," Mrs. Pouncer said, moving to the book upon the dressing table. "What have we here? Aha! A very interesting book. Very interesting. No wonder, Black Malkin, that we pull down big atlases to see where gulfs and places are. A very interesting, pretty little book, Black Malkin, dear. But not at all the sort of reading for a nice young gentleman who ought
to be giving his mind to Pauvre. I think, my dear Black Malkin, I will remove this little book.
At this she put it into her handbag, which shut with a snap. The odious Black Malkin sidled against her ankles, purring. When she had taken the little book, she said,
I will just look round the room, Black Malkin dear, in case there should be any other things of interest.
She lifted up a pair of glasses upon a handle and began her search. She looked under the valance of the dressing table.
Sugar, I see,
She said.
What are our young friend's private lunch, I presume? Rather dirty, Sugar. Unwholesome, I should say. Something of a smell of peppermint, too, isn't there? Or am I wrong about the peppermint? Not quite peppermint, either. Though, but I've lost the scent now.
She stared at the prince and at the model of the plunderer.
The sports of our dear fathers,
She said.
and the toy, plunderer, I see. Ah, plunderer, the name of the ship.
She paused for a minute over the ship. Then she pulled a chair to the wall, stood upon it, fixed a magic lens upon the handle of her glasses, and stared through the model fixedly.
Nothing there,
She said.
nothing hidden there, no clue.
She carried the chair across the room, again stood upon it, and examined the pistols in the same way.
Useless,
She said.
no clue there. But let us now look at the hearthstone.
She rolled back the carpet so as to expose the slab. It was a big, clean block, 6 feet by 4, apparently mortared and leadened into brickwork. She knelt down upon it, tried several magic lenses in her glasses, but seemed unable to see through it with any. She tapped it with a little hammer which she had in her bag. She pressed the knobs and the planks near it, as though hoping to press a secret spring. Nothing happened.
I don't think that there is anything there,
She said.
but there may be a hollow space. It is a very big stone for an upstairs fireplace. There seems to be nothing more to examine here.
She tapped the window seats and the wainscotings, looked under the bed, pulled the sofa to one side.
I think, my dear Black Malkin,
She said.
we might go. There's nothing of any interest. We will go back to the library where books like this seem to be found.
As she moved past the dressing table on her way to the door, she paused again.
It is odd,
She said.
I really distinctly caught that smell of peppermint. Or not quite peppermint. Perhaps it is a little... there.
Excuse me.
Perhaps it is a little the smell of mice, my dear young friend. You really ought between the three of you to be able to control the mice.
The odious Black Malkin sidled against her ankles, purring. He's a regular little sucking-up sneak, Kay thought. I'm jolly glad the keeper soused him. Mrs. Pouncer looked at Kay for a moment. He rolled slowly over drowsily.
How soundly our young friend sleeps, she said. Well, the sounder the better. We don't want young friends prying about the house while we're at work.
Saying this, she moved out of the room, followed by Black Malkin. When the door was closed upon her, Kay sat up to make sure that she had gone. I need another drink of water. It's so hard doing some of these voices. Oh my goodness. Gotta get this other bottle open. There we are. I'll know her again if I ever see her, he said to himself. Oh, thank you, Yulian20, for the posture check. Oh my goodness. Oh, sometimes one has to be careful with their posture. Always remember, my dear scholars, you always want good posture when reading, especially when doing voices. You want to be able to breathe better. I'll know her again if I ever see her, he said to himself. She has a hooky nose, a hooky chin, very bright black eyes, long dingle-dangle earrings which click, a poke bonnet, a red cloak, a stick with a hooky handle, and pointy black shiny shoes. And although in a way she looks old, in another way she looks very young. And she has bagged my book. I'll see if I can't follow her to get it back. It was all very well to make this resolve from a warm bed, but when out of bed and about to open the door onto what might be a dark passage full of witches, it did not seem so wise. And yet, he thought, Roper Bilge's name is in the book. If she finds out somehow that I got it from the keeper instead of from the library, she'll probably tell the governess. I shall be asked how I got it, and then there'll be a row. It will all be discovered then. My going out and everything. I must get the book. He looked out into the passage, which was now all dark and still. The house was asleep. He could not see Mrs. Pouncer nor her cat. They'll be in the magic room, he thought, and the magic room is in this direction. It's in the wall here. But although it was in the wall, he could not find it, nor any door, nor window to it. There was nothing but the bare wall, papered over. I believe I'm only dreaming this, he said. He was about to go back to his room when he heard a door open in the northern corridor. A light appeared. He shrank back into the powdering chamber, as it was called, near which he was standing. Lying down on the floor, he could see fairly well. Black Malkin appeared, bearing a red light. After him came Mrs. Pouncer, crowned and wearing a long robe covered with magic signs. She bore a staff or wand. After her came Grey Malkin, bearing a smoking dish. They did not see him. They went straight down the stairs into the hall. The smoke from Grey Malkin's dish was sweet to smell, and gave one an excited feeling. I do believe, Kay said to himself, that they are going to practice magic in the hall. I'll jolly well watch what they do, and see if I can't do it myself. He gave up the thought of the book. That did not seem nearly so interesting as watching magic. Unfortunately, although he climbed to a place from which he could see into the hall, he could not see where Mrs. Pouncer stood, nor what she did. He saw Grey Malkin coming round from time to time with a smoking dish, and he could hear Mrs. Pouncer's voice making the incantation. I know what she is doing, Kay thought. Witches make incantations to call their familiar friends, who tell them all that they want to know. I do wish that I could hear what she said, and I wonder what Black Malkin is doing all this time. He tried creeping down the stairs so as to see, but the old stairs creaked, and the noise of the incantation growing louder frightened him. There came a rushing noise. The hall door opened with a clang. Kay felt the cool night air in a blast about him. Looking down at the hall, he saw a glittering child enter from the garden. The child strode up to the circle in which Grey Malkin had been moving. I am here, he said. Why have you called me? Oh, thank you for the hydrate, FT Wastes. thank you. My goodness. A lot of water in this one. Excuse me. Where was I? Mrs. Pouncer's voice replied,
Tell me, if you know, what became of the ship Plunderer after Roper Bilges was put on the island?
I do not know, the child answered. He moved back to the door, growing less bright as he receded. He seemed to fade away. The incantation went on for a minute, then there came another rushing noise. A glittering girl came into the hall and strode up to the circle. I am here, she said. Why have you called me? Mrs. Pouncer repeated her command, but the girl did not know what had become of the ship. When she too had faded away, other figures appeared one by one as the incantation went on. Excuse me. An old man, an old woman, a youth crowned with ivy leaves, and a woman riding a black mare. Mrs. Pouncer ordered the old man, the old woman, and the youth each in turn to tell what became of the plunderer. Each said, I do not know, and faded away. But when the woman on the black mare rode in, Mrs. Pouncer did not mention the ship. Instead of that, she strode up to the circle and said in an angry voice,
Why do you come? You are not called.
I am here, the woman said, and I will not go without reason.
I charge you to be gone,
Mrs. Pouncer cried. Kay saw Black Malkin and Grey Malkin run up beside Mrs. Pouncer. Black Malkin shook his red light, Grey Malkin his dish of burning gums. Mrs. Pouncer uttered charms and threatened with her wand. The woman seemed angry, but backed her black mare out of the door, out of sight.
the bold-faced thing, to affront me so,
Mrs. Pouncer said as she went back to her incantation. Somehow the woman's riding in had upset the spells. It was a long time before another person appeared. When he did appear, he was a stern-looking man, all dressed in red. I am here, he said. Why have you called me?
Tell me, if you know, what became of the ship Plunderer after Roper Bilges was put on the island?
She sank.
With all the treasure on board?
Yes.
With all her crew on board?
Yes.
Can I get at the wreck or where the wreck was?
No.
Nor take the treasure from her?
No.
Where is the wreck, then?
Where you cannot find her.
Answer me. Where is she?
Gone.
Where was the wreck? I charge you. Tell me.
I will not be charged. Beware you how you order me. He spoke these last words angrily, so that Kay, who was frightened, slipped back into his bedroom. He heard them talk angrily at each other for some minutes, making more and more noise till Kay wondered that the governess did not wake. Mrs. Pouncer seemed to be getting rather the worst of it. Kay, said a sweet voice at the window. Kay hopped round with a start. A light was shining in at the window. Someone had opened it. It was the woman on the black mare. They were floating there beside the window, while she looked in to call him. There were golden wings on the mare's shoulders, and hooves. He had not noticed these before. The hooves were treading the air much as a swimmer will tread water. "Will you come to ride with me?" she asked. She was a somewhat fierce but smiling lady, with keen gray eyes full of courage, and a face tanned by the wind. Her cheeks were a rosy brown, and her smile most winning. I'm not sure if I'd go with someone who just appeared at my window like this. "There's room on the saddle in front of me," she said. Indeed there was, a most lovely little blue saddle with golden stirrups and a bar in front to hold on by. "Won't you come?" she said. "May I, really?" She held out her hands to him and helped him into the saddle. One thing troubled him. "Suppose Mrs. Pouncer comes back into my room and finds me gone," he said. "That will be arranged for," she said. "Look, there's Nibbins in your bed, so curled up that anybody would think it was you." Indeed, there was Nibbins, wrapped in the bedclothes, curled well down into the pillow. It was great cheek of him, Kay thought, not asking leave. "How do you know about Nibbins?" he asked. "Oh, I know about a great many things." He heard the quarrel downstairs in the hall become very noisy indeed, as though Mrs. Pouncer and the man were flinging things at each other. "We will come away from all that," the woman said, as she touched up the mare. Instantly she had swung away from the house towards the hills, flying high and very swiftly through the cool summer night, so warm in patches above bare ground. They passed quite close to the church tower with its 4 gold weathercocks. "Oh, do let me look at the weathercocks close to," Kay said. "You shall give them some golden corn out of my mare's nose bag," the woman said. And then, lo, the mare sidled up to each weathercock in turn, and Kay was able to offer golden corn grains from the nose bag to each. The weathercocks were old-fashioned and somewhat battered birds, rather stiff upon their perches and blind from the weather. Each, on eating the grains, flapped his heavy golden wings and crowed a little. When all had been fed, they went on with their song, which they hummed together to pass the time. Oh, here we come with more singing, my dear scholars. Here we come with more singing. I will have to drink a little to prepare for the song. The Northwest Cock sang. FTWA singing my favorite. Skinning my favorite. Of course. I have to think of a tune for this. The Northwest Cock sang,
"I watch the common people live and die between the hard earth and the windy sky."
The Northeast Cock sang,
I watch the great ones rule. I watch the great ones ruling in their pride that cannot last, the life that cannot bide.
The Southeast Cock sang,
I watch the wild life stirring in the wood, the green sap and the hungering for blood.
Yeah, that's how it's pronounced. The Southwest Cock sang,
I watch the mind that seeks and will declare the meaning and the purpose everywhere.
Then they all sang together,
We'll keep the watch and face the wind that blows, while under us the heavy hour goes.
The wind shifted a little as they sang, so that each of the 4 creaked a little as they came round to face it. "Goodbye, weathercocks," Kay called as the mare galloped away. "I should think they love it up there, up in the wind, with the jackdaws and the pigeons and the bells chiming every third hour." "You wonder what became of the plunderer," the woman said. "The man said that she sank with all the treasure on board and all her crew." "Well, perhaps we shall know more about that presently. Come up, mare." They were now going so fast that the rivers and ponds streaked away far beneath them like flashes of light. "It is true," the woman said, "that the plunderer sank with all her treasure, as well as with all of her crew who were in her at the time. But one of her crew was not in her at the time. He had been put ashore on an island before the ship was wrecked." "Yes, I know," Kay said. "Roper Bilges, the mutineer who put Grandpapa Harker on shore." "Oh, how clever we are," the woman said with a strange smile. "But we will not talk now, for we have to come down here." "Where are we?" Kay asked. "How far have we come?" "We are in the north," she said, "at Trigger Court. We have come some hundreds of miles." The mare slackened pace as she glided gently down to the end of a lake, from which a grass slope led to a big house. It was still dark night everywhere. Owls were cruising along the woods near the water. Fish were leaping in the lake and rabbits hopping about on the lawn. The mare steadied near the front of the house, which had many blank windows, and one wide open French window, brightly lit on the second floor. The woman stopped the mare beside this window. "We get down here, Kay," she said. She leaped from the saddle into the balcony, and then taking Kay's hands, she jumped him down beside her, and at once drew him with her into the lighted room. Oh, thank you. It was a big, bright, pretty bedroom, hung with white chitses, I can't pronounce this, chitses, which were patterned with pink roses tied with pale blue ribbon. The furniture was old and very shiny from polish, lacquer, and brass. A fire was burning in the grate, although it was a summer night. To their left, as they entered, about 15 feet from the window, was a big double bed, hung with that word, chits, I think, like the rest of the room. In this bed, propped up by pillows, a wicked old woman in a very gay dressing gown was reading a springy story at which she was laughing. Beside her on a table was a bottle of champagne. I will spell it for you. Wastes down there. Oh, like that. I don't think I've ever heard of that word before. At which she was laughing. Beside her on a table was a bottle of champagne. She sipped a glass of the wine from time to time. In her mouth was a long cigarette holder, containing a lighted cigarette. She chuckled over one of the jests.
"Oh dear, if I read any more of this, I shall crack my ribs to matchsticks."
Miss Susan Pricker," the woman called. The old lady sat up fiercely in her bed.
"Deuce take your impudence, ma'am," she said. "I'm not Miss Susan Pricker. My name is Piney Trigger of Trigger Hall. And what are you doing coming in at the window at this time of night?"
Miss Twinny Pricker, the woman said, don't think to bluster me, ma'am. Your name is not Trigger, but Pricker.
If I ring for my medical attendant,
the old lady said,
you will be removed in custody.
You may ring for your medical attendant, ma'am. Excuse me. FT waste. I know the singular, but I haven't seen it plural. Oh, interesting. But he will not hear, because in the first place, the bell will not ring, and in the second place, he has gone to a dance, and will not be here until dawn.
Look at that boy,
the old lady replied,
catching his mortal end in pajamas.
His mortal grandmother. The old lady put down her cigarette. She clenched her fist at them, pulled off her cap and wig, and hurled it at them.
Take that for your impudence, she said. If I rise from this bed, I'll make you eat it.
Miss Pricker, the woman said, a great many years ago your father helped to do this child's great-grandfather cruel wrong, which altered his life for him. Your father was swiftly punished for his share in the wrong, and got no benefit from it. But you can at least tell this child what became of the ship Plunderer, and how your father came to change his name. In the meantime, won't you put on your headdress? The night air may otherwise strike chill.
Thank you, Miss Whoever you are. The night air certainly makes you sufficiently cool. I will put on my cap, and how do you know about Sir Piney Trigger?
FT Waste. So you remember the Cowardly Lion song in the Oz movie? My regal robes of the forest would be satin, not cotton, not chits. So it's like that. Chits is... Oh, that's interesting. I'm guessing then it's a material of some sort, by the sound of it. Huh. He was not Piney Trigger, but Tweeny Pricker.
Prove it,
the old lady said.
As they say in the law courts, prove it.
The young woman pointed at the wall. There, Kay, she said, is a portrait of this lady's father, the Tweeny Pricker about whom you have read. See if he be like the description. Kay looked as he was bid. The man in the picture had cold blue eyes which stuck out like lobster eyes. FTA's floral pattern printed cloth from the look of it. Oh, interesting, interesting. Learned something new tonight. It's always wonderful to learn something new. He had a wide mouth which suddenly opened to show 2 teeth gone on the left side. The hair was just the color of a hank of sea twine. It was twiny hair. The man looked sinister, as Captain Harker had said, but with a great deal in him. Mostly evil, but not all. He was like the old lady in the bed. He wore good black broadcloth, a white stock, and a blue necktie about the stock. The portrait had a label beneath it. Sir Piney Trigger, Honduras merchant, died 1850. Twiny Pricker had that sort of hair, Kay said, and those kind of lobster eyes, and 2 teeth gone on the left.
A great many thousands have all those marks,
the old lady said.
Think again, child, and then perhaps you will remove yourselves.
He had a woman's heart transfixed with an arrow done in gunpowder on his chest, Kay said, and the fat ox of Bedford in the same on his right arm.
He had nothing of the kind,
the old lady said. Yes, he had, the woman answered. Look there. Look at the portrait. As they looked at the portrait, Sir Piney Trigger, Honduras merchant, stirred in his canvas. His hands, which were coarse, blunt, and square-fingered, unbuttoned his waistcoat and rolled back his costly frilled shirt. There was the transfixed heart upon his chest, and the greater part of the ox of Bedford, fat beyond belief. He could not well show the beast as far as the trail without tearing the shirt. The old lady poured herself a large glass of champagne and drank it quickly.
Very well, she said. He was 20, Pricker. What of it? He is not going to be bothered by that at this time of day, I think. I like to think that he was 20, Pricker, and had a bit of go and a bit of fun as a young man. He did put his captain ashore, and ran away with the ship with all the bishop's candlesticks. How we used to roar with laughter over it. And then he rounded on the gunner who was giving himself airs and put him ashore too. Let me see, what was his name? It was one of those maritime names, Squilges or Dirges.
Bilges, Kay said.
Just as I was saying, Bilges. He put Squilges ashore, but the others did not like that so well.
Dr. Zadium, the diction in this book is something. Yes, it is. It is. It is. It is. It really is. Oh, what's... Oh, that's weird. Huh. Something's going on with the thing.
For the next night, or almost the next night, they put him ashore on a sandbank. But my father marked some of them first. Pinked, they called it then. Pinks them in the plexus was the phrase. Ah, these fine old phrases are gone out, since pinafores and temperance became the rage. My father pinked them to purpose, but there were too many for them, for him. My father said that being on the sandbank was easily the hottest time he ever had. There being nothing whatever to drink, except the dew that collected at nights upon his tarpaulin hat. He used to lick this as it collected. In the day he bathed in the sea. Food he had largely to do without, except a kind of marine worm which he found buried in the sand. Pa used to say that he never put in so much sleep as upon that sandbank. That, and thinking what he would have to eat and drink when he returned to civilization, was how he passed the time. That and bathing and getting into wet sand to avoid the hottest of the sun, and of course digging for these worms. Quite the early bird.
Easy.
A man like my pa is not easy to be quenched, any more than I am. My heart is no more used than a shifting backstay. But I can take my wine, I hope, and be gone, dull care. I'll sing till I die.
Oh, here we go, another song, my dear scholars, which means more water. Oh my goodness.
I'll live to the age of 108, and then I'll go courting to find me a mate. I'll live to the age of 109, and finish my bottle whenever I dine. I'll live to the age of 110, when I'll mount on my horse and go courting again. Deuce take these living times.
Alien20, how is your throat? My throat is fine, actually. I'm doing okay. That's why I drink the water before I sing, because I know I'm going to do rough on my throat.
Deuce take these living times. I'll have a deviled bone to my breakfast as long as I've a gum in my mouth. Chin up, my lads. There's shot in the locker still. What was I saying? About my father. Oh, yes. He was on the sandbank, wasn't he? How did he get off? Why, a Chesimardee came by, not looking where she was going. He saw someone on board her striking a light with a flint and steel, so he hailed her to keep off, or she'd be ashore, and then begged them to take him off, which they did, though most of them thought he was a ghost. Who were they? Well, everybody is young at some times, I suppose. I suppose everybody has to live. One may as well have one's fling. Besides, the rich of that time used to flaunt their wealth. It was the greatest temptation to the poor to come to take it. I suppose they cracked people's crowns to take it. Some crowns are exceedingly easily cracked, and a lot which are cracked already are better cracked. Deuce take me, I'll have been a pirate myself if I had the chance.
Oh my goodness. She goes on and on and on. There's gonna be a lot in this one.
Besides, these people who rescued my father weren't pirates. They were only on a pleasure cruise. Besides, it was legal in a sense, for they were at war at the time, or just had been, or would have been, or soon would be again. Besides, although my father said they had a lot of watches and necklaces in the Chassemerie, that proved nothing. Rather the reverse, for one of the party, a very gentlemanly fellow, was a jeweller by profession, and another, who was said to have been a titled person, was a collector of such things, what they call a connoisseur. Lots of people do collect them. What's more natural than that he should acquire some on a pleasure cruise? I should call it quite remarkable if he didn't.
Oh my goodness.
However, I find a lot of these squirmish, mealy-mouthed people of the
I can't talk. I am going over my words.
Of the pleasant present day, who live on pap and poppycock, and are always ready to condemn anybody who lives in a way that is not their own way. Nothing shows a narrow mind like that. I'm glad to say I'm without prejudice. If a man says to me, "I'm a pirate, madam," I say to him, "I admire your pluck, sir. Do you want a mate, sir?" That is my opinion of pirates. But then I take out to my father, "Burn my wig and bonnet if this bottle isn't empty."
Oh my goodness.
These people, whoever they were, lived on the shores of one of the lagoons near there. I dare say they do still. Some were French, some Spanish, some Americans, a few of all sorts. They'd rather lost their way. My pa directed them how to steer. That very evening, as they sailed, they sighted the masts of a wreck sticking out of the water, with the sails still set. My father knew the sails at once, from having made them and mended them. The wreck was the Plunderer, lying in 6 or 7 fathoms of water. She had been caught in a squall when the men were drunk. You see what came of getting rid of my father, the one man who could have saved them.
Excuse me. Oh my goodness.
They wasn't a side of the crew, my pa said, but the sharks there had been a well-fed sort of a look. Nearby were the 2 boats floating bottom up. That was the end of them. Those that hadn't been drowned the sharks had eaten. "That's my old ship," my pa said, "that I fell overboard from the other night." "She's fallen overboard herself now," they said. "What was in her? Anything worth diving for?" "No, only sugar. It will all be spoilt." So they left her there and sailed on, but my pa took a very careful reckoning of where she was. If you'll oblige me with a light to my cigarette instead of gawping at me in that South Country fashion, it'll be a comfort and a change. Tobacco isn't ladylike, they say. Don't talk about these pinafore things to me. Ladies, quotha! Oh, about my father. He landed with the Chassemerie people in a very pleasant French city. I name no names. Nice ironwork on the balconies, he said there was. Altogether a change from the sandbank and the worms. But he was destitute. He could not set off at once by himself to fetch the treasure from the plunderer, and for a long time he could not find anyone to be his partner. That is where respectable people fail. They won't gamble.
Oh my goodness. I need a more drink. Where was I?
My pa had a hard year of it, and all the time that treasure was sinking deeper into the coral. Believe me, he was there a year before he met a sportsman.
Was the sportsman's name Abner Brown? Kay asked.
Yes, child, it was. Who was Abner Brown? He was a local gentleman who received things, that is, bought things from peddlers and people. My father dealt with him, and at last persuaded him to come to look for the plunderer. My pa had no money. Abner had.
Give 1 second, scholars. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, my dear scholars. We were having a bit of a row in one of the other rooms. Not sure what it was. When I entered there, I saw a few shadows and they ducked away into one of the bookcases. We get Sometimes we get the odd interdimensional visitor, and they get quite nosy and noisy. Believe me. Now where was I?
My pa had no money. Abner had. Abner fitted out a yawl. Then he and my pa set out in her to whereabouts the plunderer had been, and spent a month there dragging the bottom with grapnels, hoping to find the wreck. They sailed to and fro, to and fro. They found coral and seaweed and squids with parrot beaks, but no plunderer. Of course, a year had passed. There had been storms and sandbanks formed quickly there. Then she might have been struck by lightning and broken apart. Still, it was sad not to find any trace of her. After a month, Abner said he would search no more. It was no good looking any longer. My pa was all for searching for another month. But of course it was Abner's yawl, and then the stormy season was at hand, so there was nothing for it but to turn. My pa spoke his mind, though. He called Abner a lily-livered papoose. He said Abner bore no malice for this, but on their coming ashore gave him a sum of money and sent him along the coast to a seaport where he could go into the hotel trade. You might think that this was handsome in Abner Brown, my mouse-like miss and sir, judge by results, I say. What was he like, this Abner Brown? He was like a white, sweet, sanctified horse-dealer, or a hymn-singing cutthroat, or any cherry-lipped poisoner who will drop a tear at your pain and put ratsbane in your beer at the same breath. Talk? He would talk the hind legs off a mule. Weep? He would weep at a word. He wept when my pa called him a papoose. He was always weeping. A crocodile was a drought to him.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to come to a stopping point soon.
But how you two can expect me to speak of a man like that without rinsing my mouth to clear the taste away is more than I can comprehend. What did my pa do? He went into the refreshment trade, selling liquor to seamen. Then he did a little crimping, which is either needlework or keeping a sailor's home. With the profits of this, he went into the industry business, getting servants from savage parts to places where they could go to school and wear proper trousers instead of the fans and things. Oh my goodness. You can see that hasn't aged well. Sometimes only pieces of sealing wax, my pa said, which they were accustomed to where they lived in their heathendom. Oh my goodness. He did very well in the industry business and brought many heathen savages. It's hard to say this part. And brought many heathen savages into the advantages of civilization. Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Sorry, I know this is an older book, but some of these
parts just make me wince so hard.
Sometimes they died, of course, but that was due to the fevers. That wasn't my pa's doing. My pa always gave them what he gave to a seaman, 15 inches broad to lie upon, and always the very best plank and chain. He spared no expense in those ways, never. Penny wise, pound foolish was one of his mottos.
I'm gonna stop there. I, I need to preserve my voice. And she does go on for another long pages. So I need to stop there so I can preserve my voice. We at least know where we stopped. But yeah, oh my goodness. The last bit though, oh my she's such a despicable character. But so far, the book is getting really exciting. It's getting really exciting. I mean, we're seeing a little bit more of the weird dreamlike magic that's in this story, and it's just quite a read. In 20, how is your Yulin 20, great job reading. Thank you, thank you. Cool skeleton. Sounds good. Yep. Yulin 20, looking forward to more of this story. Yes, and if everything goes according to plan, we will be reading more of this next week. I'm gonna make a decision on Tuesday. Tuesday, we will probably play Metal Gear Solid. I need to make some decisions involving that game though. In future. But Thursday we will be reading more of The Midnight Folk. I am really enjoying this. We're almost halfway through the book. It's a longer book. But I hope you've been enjoying it, my dear scholars. It's been a lot of fun. But before I close out the night, let's see if there is anyone we can raid tonight. Okay. I don't have my Twitch. Give me 1 second. I was a little. You know what? Let's raid Kintron. He's streaming Return of Sherlock Holmes. Let's go give Kintron a raid. So, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye-bye.